The scene opens in a quiet, unassuming courthouse nestled in the heart of a small town. The building is old, its walls painted a dull beige that seems to echo the monotony of daily life. Inside, rows of wooden benches creak under the weight of spectators waiting for their turn in front of the judge. Among them sits Maya Johnson, a young black woman whose presence commands attention despite her calm demeanor. She clutches a folder tightly in her hands, her knuckles white from gripping it so hard. Today, she's here to contest a traffic ticket she believes was unfairly given to her. A ticket she feels was issued not because of any real violation, but because of the color of her skin. Maya isn't just any ordinary citizen. She's a fighter. A single mother of two, she works tirelessly as a community advocate, organizing workshops and campaigns to educate people about systemic racism and how to combat it. Her passion for justice runs deep, fueled by years of witnessing inequality firsthand. But today, instead of standing on a stage or leading a discussion, she finds herself sitting nervously in a courtroom, preparing to face someone who holds immense power over her fate: Judge Richard Holloway. Judge Holloway is known throughout the town for his stern and often abrasive demeanor. Tall and broad-shouldered, with sharp features and piercing eyes, he carries himself with an air of superiority that makes most people uneasy. His reputation precedes him. He's infamous for handing down harsh sentences and showing little patience for those who dare to challenge him. Many locals whisper behind closed doors about his biases, claiming he treats people differently based on their race or social status. Yet, no one has ever dared to confront him directly. After all, he wears the robe, wields the gavel, and controls the room. As Maya waits for her name to be called, she scans the courtroom. The atmosphere is tense, almost suffocating. Families sit quietly, afraid to make even the slightest noise. Lawyers shuffle papers, their faces blank masks hiding whatever they might truly feel. In the corner, a group of reporters scribbles notes, ready to document anything newsworthy. Maya takes a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. She knows this won't be easy. Still, she reminds herself why she's here, not just for herself, but for everyone else who has faced similar injustices. Finally, the bailiff calls out her name. Maya Johnson, please approach the bench. With a mix of determination and apprehension, Maya rises from her seat and walks toward the front of the room. Every step feels heavier than the last, as if the weight of the world is pressing down on her shoulders. As she stands before Judge Holloway, she meets his gaze head-on, refusing to look away. For a moment, there's silence, a brief pause where time seems to stand still. Then, without warning, the judge leans forward, his expression cold and unreadable. "Ms. Johnson," he begins, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "let's hear what you have to say for yourself." The tone of his words sends a chill through the room, setting the stage for what promises to be a confrontation unlike any other. Maya swallows hard, knowing that the next few minutes could change everything, for better or worse. Maya takes a deep breath, steadying herself as all eyes in the courtroom turn to her. She begins speaking clearly and confidently, explaining how she was pulled over for no apparent reason while driving through a predominantly white neighborhood. Her voice is calm but firm as she describes the officer's dismissive attitude and the way he seemed more focused on interrogating her than listening to her explanation. "I wasn't speeding," she says, holding up a copy of her car's maintenance records to prove her speedometer was accurate. "This ticket isn't about traffic laws, it's about bias." But Judge Holloway doesn't seem interested in hearing her side of the story. Instead, he leans back in his chair, his lips curling into a smirk that sends a ripple of unease through the room. "Ms. Johnson," he interrupts, his tone mocking, "are you always this dramatic when you're trying to avoid responsibility?" The comment draws a few nervous chuckles from some corners of the courtroom, though most people shift uncomfortably in their seats, sensing something deeply wrong about the exchange. Maya blinks, momentarily stunned by his words, but she quickly regains her composure. "Your Honor," she replies evenly, "I'm not being dramatic. I'm simply asking for fairness. This isn't just about me. It's about how people like me are treated every day." Her use of the phrase, "people like me," hangs heavy in the air, and for a split second, there's silence. But Judge Holloway brushes it off with a wave of his hand, as if her concerns are nothing more than an inconvenience. "Oh, here we go again," he mutters under his breath, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The race card. How predictable." He rolls his eyes exaggeratedly, leaning forward now with an expression that borders on amusement. "Let me guess. You think this whole thing is because you're black, right? Well, let me tell you something, Ms. Johnson. Racism ended decades ago. Maybe it's time you took some personal accountability instead of blaming everything on your skin color." The room falls deathly quiet. Maya feels her cheeks flush with anger and shame, but she forces herself to stay composed. She knows losing her temper will only play into his hands. "Your Honor," she says slowly, enunciating each word carefully, "this isn't about playing any kind of card. It's about facts. Studies show that drivers of color are disproportionately targeted in situations like this. If you'd listen." "I don't need a lecture, Ms. Johnson," Judge Holloway snaps, cutting her off mid-sentence. His patience, or lack thereof, is wearing thin. He gestures toward the folder in her hands. "Why don't you stop wasting my time and show me something relevant? Or are these papers just props to make yourself look important?" The jab stings, but Maya refuses to back down. She flips open the folder and pulls out a printed report showing statistics on racial profiling and traffic stops. As she starts to explain the data, Judge Holloway interrupts yet again. "Enough," he barks, slamming his palm against the desk. The sound echoes through the courtroom like a gunshot, startling everyone. "You're not here to teach me sociology. You're here because you broke the law, or at least, that's what the officer claims. Now, either present actual evidence or sit down and accept your punishment." By now, murmurs have begun spreading among the spectators. Some shake their heads in disbelief at the judge's behavior, while others glance nervously at one another, unsure of what to say or do. Even the bailiff shifts awkwardly near the door, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Maya feels the weight of their stares, but she stands tall, refusing to let the judge intimidate her further. She takes one last deep breath before responding. "Your Honor," she says, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "If this is how justice works in your courtroom, then maybe it's time for someone to shine a light on it." Her words hang in the air, bold and defiant, leaving Judge Holloway momentarily speechless. For the first time since the trial began, he looks slightly rattled, but only for a moment. Then, with a dismissive flick of his wrist, he mutters, "We'll see about that," and signals for the next witness to be called. What neither Maya nor Judge Holloway realizes, however, is that someone in the back row has been watching the entire scene unfold with growing interest, and they're about to change everything. In the back row of the courtroom, partially hidden by the shadows cast from the tall windows, sits a man who has been observing the entire exchange with keen interest. His name is Harold Davis, a retired FBI agent in his late 60s with a reputation for uncovering corruption that others couldn't or wouldn't touch. Today, he's here on what should have been a routine visit to assist an old colleague with research for an unrelated case. But as he watches Judge Holloway mock and belittle Maya Johnson, something about the scene strikes him as deeply suspicious. Harold isn't easily rattled. Years of investigating high-stakes cases have taught him to trust his instincts, and right now, they're screaming at him that something isn't right. He doesn't know Maya personally, but he can see the determination in her eyes even as she endures the judge's cutting remarks. What bothers him most, though, isn't just the obvious disrespect. It's the way Judge Holloway keeps glancing subtly toward certain individuals seated in the gallery. It's almost imperceptible, but Harold notices it. Quick, fleeting looks directed at two men dressed in expensive suits who seem out of place among the usual crowd of anxious defendants and weary family members. Something about those men sets off alarm bells in Harold's mind. They're too polished, too calm, and their presence feels calculated. One of them scribbles notes onto a legal pad while the other leans back casually, tapping his pen against his knee. Neither seems particularly invested in the proceedings, at least not until Judge Holloway makes one of his snide comments. Then both men glance up briefly, exchanging what appears to be a knowing look before returning to their pretense of disinterest. Harold narrows his eyes, his curiosity piqued. He shifts slightly in his seat, adjusting his glasses as if to get a better view. That's when it happens. A young clerk hurries past him, carrying a stack of folders precariously balanced in her arms. In her haste, she stumbles over the uneven floorboards, and one of the folders slips from the pile, landing near Harold's feet. Without hesitation, he bends down to pick it up, intending to hand it back to her. But as he does, a few loose papers spill out, and what he sees stops him cold. The documents are filled with names, dates, and numbers that make no sense at first glance, but one detail jumps out immediately. Photographs of Judge Holloway shaking hands with someone who looks eerily similar to one of the well-dressed men in the gallery. The caption beneath the photo reads, "Meeting with Syndicate Representatives." Harold's heart skips a beat. He knows exactly what this means. These aren't ordinary records. They're evidence of something far more sinister. Before the clerk can reach for the folder, Harold discreetly slides the incriminating photos into his jacket pocket. Handing her the rest of the papers with a polite nod, he forces himself to remain calm despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. His mind races as he pieces together the implications. Could Judge Holloway be involved with organized crime? And if so, how deep does the corruption go? For a moment, Harold considers leaving the courthouse altogether. After all, he's retired. He's earned the right to step away from danger. But then he looks back at Maya, still standing resolute in front of the judge, despite the verbal assault she's enduring. There's fire in her voice, resilience in her posture, and a quiet dignity that commands respect. Harold realizes that walking away would mean letting another injustice slide unchecked. No, he decides firmly. This ends today. As the trial continues, Harold pulls out his phone under the guise of checking messages. Instead, he sends a quick text to a trusted contact at the bureau, attaching a blurred photo of the documents he found. Within minutes, he receives a reply. "Stay put," where Anne wrote. Relief washes over him, but he knows there's still work to be done. He keeps his gaze fixed on Judge Holloway, watching every move the man makes. Something tells him the real drama is about to unfold, and when it does, Harold will be ready to act. The tension in the room grows thicker with each passing second, unnoticed by most, but palpable to those who know where to look. Harold adjusts his tie, his jaw tightening as he prepares for what comes next. Whatever happens, one thing is certain: justice might be delayed, but it won't be denied. Not on his watch. The courtroom buzzes with tension as Judge Holloway continues his tirade against Maya, his voice sharp and unyielding. He slams his gavel once more, silencing the murmurs that had begun to ripple through the gallery. Enough of this nonsense, he barks, glaring at Maya as if daring her to challenge him again. But Maya stands firm, her chin held high despite the humiliation she feels burning in her chest. She knows she's fighting not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever been treated unfairly in a system that claims to serve justice. Unbeknownst to anyone in the room, Harold Davis sits quietly in the back row, his mind racing as he processes the explosive evidence hidden in his pocket. The photos he discovered are damning. Proof that Judge Holloway isn't just a rude or biased man, but someone deeply entangled with dangerous people. Harold's years of experience tell him this is no ordinary corruption case. This is big, bigger than the small-town courthouse where they currently sit. And yet, here it is, unfolding right before his eyes. As Judge Holloway prepares to deliver what seems like a foregone conclusion, a guilty verdict against Maya, the atmosphere shifts subtly. A faint commotion stirs near the entrance of the courtroom. At first, it's easy to dismiss as a minor disruption, perhaps a latecomer trying to slip in unnoticed. But then the sound grows louder. Footsteps echoing down the hallway, urgent and purposeful. Spectators crane their necks to see what's happening, curiosity mingling with unease. Harold doesn't need to turn around to know who's coming. His contact at the bureau works fast, and he can already hear the unmistakable authority in the voices approaching. The double doors burst open, and a team of federal agents strides into the room, their badges gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Every head swivels toward them, jaws dropping in shock. For a moment, time seems to freeze. Even Judge Holloway pauses mid-sentence, his mouth hanging slightly open as he stares at the unexpected intrusion. One of the agents steps forward, his commanding presence immediately drawing attention. "Judge Richard Holloway," he announces loudly, his voice cutting through the stunned silence. "You are under arrest for conspiracy, bribery, and obstruction of justice." Gasps erupt from the crowd, followed by a wave of whispers so loud it's almost deafening. Judge Holloway's face turns pale, his confident demeanor crumbling in an instant. He sputters, pointing a shaky finger at the agents. "What is this, some kind of joke? On what grounds?" "On the grounds of your involvement with organized crime," the agent interrupts, cutting him off sharply. "We have evidence linking you to illegal activities, including money laundering and collusion with local syndicates. You will come with us now." Two agents step forward, handcuffs ready, while others fan out to secure the area. The two well-dressed men in the gallery abruptly rise from their seats, clearly panicked, but they're quickly intercepted by additional agents who flash their badges and demand cooperation. Maya watches in stunned disbelief as the scene unfolds before her. Her heart pounds in her chest, a mix of emotions swirling inside her: relief, vindication, and even a hint of disbelief that this nightmare might finally be over. She glances toward Harold, who gives her a subtle nod, his expression unreadable but reassuring. Though she doesn't fully understand what's happening, one thing is clear: the tide has turned. Meanwhile, Judge Holloway struggles futilely against the agents, his protests growing louder and more desperate. "This is absurd. I've done nothing wrong. Someone set me up," he shouts, his voice cracking under the weight of his desperation. But his words fall on deaf ears. The agents lead him away, his expensive robe trailing behind him as he stumbles toward the exit. As he passes Maya, he shoots her a venomous glare, as if blaming her for his downfall. But Maya holds her ground, meeting his gaze without flinching. The courtroom erupts into chaos as spectators begin talking all at once, some cheering quietly, while others look on in stunned silence. Reporters scramble to jot down notes, eager to capture every detail of the dramatic twist. Amid the commotion, Harold slips quietly out of the room, his mission accomplished. He knows the real work lies ahead, untangling the web of corruption that Judge Holloway was part of. But for now, he allows himself a small moment of satisfaction. Justice may take time, but today it took a significant step forward. And as Maya stands there, still processing everything that's happened, she realizes this is only the beginning. The fight for fairness is far from over, but thanks to one brave act of defiance, the walls of injustice have started to crack. As the chaos in the courtroom begins to settle, a new figure takes center stage. The senior federal agent who led Judge Holloway's arrest steps forward and addresses the room, his voice calm but authoritative. "Ladies and gentlemen," he says, raising a hand to quiet the murmurs still rippling through the gallery. "I understand this is an unusual situation, but I assure you that justice will prevail. This case has been dismissed, effective immediately." His words hang in the air for a moment before sinking in, and when they do, the tension breaks like a wave. Maya exhales deeply, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since she walked into the courthouse that morning. She feels a mix of emotions: relief, disbelief, and even a hint of pride. But above all, she feels vindicated. The charges against her are gone, erased by the very system that had moments ago seemed so stacked against her. A young woman sitting near the front row gives her a thumbs up, while another man claps softly, offering a nod of respect. Maya manages a small smile, though her mind is racing with everything she's just witnessed. The presiding judge now steps in to replace Judge Holloway, a kinder-looking older man with graying hair and glasses perched on the edge of his nose. He adjusts his robe before addressing Maya directly. "Ms. Johnson," he says gently, "I want to apologize for the treatment you received here today. No one should have to endure such disrespect, especially in a place meant to uphold fairness and equality. Please know that your courage in standing up for yourself has not gone unnoticed." His words hit Maya like a warm embrace. For so long, she'd felt powerless against the weight of prejudice and bias. But now, hearing someone in authority acknowledge her pain and validate it feels like a balm to her soul. "Thank you, Your Honor," she replies, her voice steady despite the lump forming in her throat. "This isn't just about me. It's about making sure no one else has to go through what I did today." The judge nods solemnly. "You're absolutely right, Ms. Johnson. And rest assured, we'll be conducting a thorough review of these events to ensure accountability moving forward. In the meantime, consider this matter resolved. You're free to go." With that, he bangs his gavel once, a final, decisive strike, and declares the session adjourned. As people begin filing out of the courtroom, some approach Maya to offer their support. One elderly woman pats her arm and whispers, "God bless you, child. Keep fighting." Another man shakes her hand firmly, saying, "You handled yourself with class. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." These small gestures mean more to Maya than they can imagine, reinforcing her belief that change is possible if enough people stand together. Outside the courthouse, reporters gather eagerly, microphones at the ready. They bombard Maya with questions about what happened inside, how she feels about Judge Holloway's arrest, and whether she plans to pursue further action. At first, Maya hesitates, unsure of what to say or how much to share. But then she remembers why she came here today, not just for herself, but for everyone who has ever been silenced or dismissed because of who they are. She steps forward, squaring her shoulders as cameras flash around her. "I came here today hoping for fairness," she begins, her voice clear and strong. "Instead, I faced ridicule and disrespect. But thanks to brave individuals who chose to step in, the truth came to light. What happened here today proves that no one is above the law, not even those who enforce it. My fight doesn't end here, though. There's still so much work to be done to make our justice system truly fair for everyone. And I promise you, I won't stop until that happens." Her words earn applause from the crowd gathering outside, many of whom raise their fists in solidarity. Among them is Harold Davis, watching quietly from a distance. Though he doesn't join the celebration, there's a flicker of admiration in his eyes as he observes Maya's determination. He knows she's exactly the kind of person needed to drive real change. Someone fearless, resilient, and unafraid to speak truth to power. As the sun sets behind the courthouse, casting golden light over the scene, Maya takes a moment to reflect. Today was a victory, but it's also a reminder of how far there is to go. The road ahead won't be easy, but she's ready. After all, every journey toward justice starts with a single step, and hers began right here, in this very courthouse. The days following the dramatic events in the courthouse become a whirlwind for Maya. News of Judge Holloway's arrest spreads like wildfire, dominating headlines across local and national media. Reporters dig deeper into his ties with organized crime, uncovering layers of corruption that shock even seasoned investigators. It turns out Judge Holloway wasn't just working alone. He was part of a vast network involving several high-profile officials, including lawyers, police officers, and even city council members. Every revelation sends ripples through the community, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. For Maya, the attention is overwhelming but validating. She becomes an unexpected symbol of resistance against systemic injustice, her name mentioned alongside activists who have spent decades fighting for equality. Invitations pour in from organizations eager to hear her story, community groups, civil rights advocates, and even national conferences invite her to speak about her experience. At first, she hesitates, unsure if she's ready to step into such a public role. But after some reflection, she realizes this is her chance to amplify the voices of those who haven't been heard. One evening, as Maya sits at her kitchen table surrounded by papers and notes, her children look up at her with wide eyes. "Mommy," her youngest asks innocently, "are you famous now?" Maya chuckles softly, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "Not famous, sweetheart," she replies. "Just doing what's right." Her older child nods knowingly, adding, "You're showing people how to stand up for themselves, Mom. That's important." Maya smiles, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The next morning, she stands before a packed auditorium at a local university, where students and faculty alike have gathered to listen to her speak. Dressed in a simple yet elegant outfit, she walks confidently to the podium, her heart pounding but her resolve unshaken. As she begins to recount her ordeal, from the moment she received the unjust ticket to the tense courtroom showdown and Judge Holloway's arrest, the room falls silent. There's no applause, no interruptions, just complete focus as everyone leans in to absorb every word. "I didn't expect any of this when I walked into that courthouse," she admits, pausing to let her words sink in. "All I wanted was fairness. But what I got instead was a reminder of how broken our system can be, and how powerful we are when we refuse to stay silent. My story isn't unique. It's one of many. Countless others face discrimination every single day, often without anyone noticing. Today, I'm here to say, notice them. Listen to them. Stand with them." Her speech earns a standing ovation, but Maya doesn't linger to bask in the praise. Instead, she uses the platform to push for tangible change. She partners with advocacy groups to draft policies aimed at increasing transparency in law enforcement and the judicial system. One proposal involves mandatory bias training for judges and officers, while another calls for independent oversight committees to review cases of alleged misconduct. Though progress is slow, Maya remains undeterred, knowing that real change takes time. Meanwhile, the fallout from Judge Holloway's arrest continues to grow. Investigators reveal that the syndicate he worked with had infiltrated multiple levels of government, using bribes and intimidation to manipulate decisions in their favor. Several officials linked to the scandal resign or are fired, while others face criminal charges. Public trust in institutions plummets, forcing leaders to take drastic measures to restore faith in the system. Town hall meetings are held, allowing citizens to voice their concerns and demand reforms. Through it all, Maya stays grounded, drawing strength from her family and the community she serves. Friends and neighbors rally around her, offering support in ways both big and small. Some bring meals to her house during busy weeks, while others volunteer to help organize events promoting legal reform. Even strangers reach out, sharing their own stories of injustice and thanking her for inspiring them to speak up. One night, as Maya lies awake thinking about everything that's happened, she feels a deep sense of gratitude, not just for herself, but for the collective effort driving these changes. What started as a personal battle has grown into something much larger, a movement fueled by courage, resilience, and hope. And though scars remain from her encounter with Judge Holloway, Maya knows she's played a pivotal role in ensuring no one else will suffer the same indignity. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, but tonight, she allows herself to dream of a future where justice truly is blind. A future shaped by the actions of ordinary people refusing to accept anything less than fairness for all. Months after the courthouse scandal rocked the small town, the ripple effects continue to spread far beyond its borders. The investigation into Judge Holloway's corruption uncovers a tangled web of deceit that stretches across state lines, implicating not only local officials, but also powerful figures in neighboring cities. Each new revelation shocks the public further, exposing how deeply entrenched systemic corruption had become. For many residents, it feels like peeling back layers of dirt they didn't even realize were there, layers that had been hiding in plain sight for years. The fallout is swift and severe. Several high-ranking officials linked to the syndicate resign under pressure, while others are arrested and face charges ranging from bribery to racketeering. One by one, their polished facades crumble, revealing the greed and moral decay beneath. Public outrage reaches a fever pitch as protests erupt outside courthouses and government buildings, demanding accountability and transparency. Signs bearing slogans like "Justice for All" and "No More Corruption" fill the streets, held aloft by citizens determined to make their voices heard. Maya becomes a central figure in this growing movement, her story serving as both a rallying cry and a blueprint for change. She travels to different towns and cities, speaking at rallies, workshops, and legislative hearings about the need for reform. Her message is simple yet powerful. Justice cannot exist without fairness, and fairness requires action. At every stop, she emphasizes the importance of ordinary people standing up against injustice, no matter how daunting the odds may seem. Change doesn't start with politicians or judges, she tells a packed auditorium during one speech. It starts with us, with you. Her advocacy inspires grassroots efforts to push for policy changes at both local and national levels. Community groups form watchdog organizations to monitor law enforcement practices, ensuring that incidents of racial profiling and bias are documented and addressed. Lawmakers begin drafting bills aimed at increasing accountability within the judicial system, including measures to create independent review boards and implement stricter ethical standards for judges and officers. Some of these proposals face resistance, particularly from those who benefit from the status quo. But Maya refuses to back down, tirelessly lobbying for support. In the midst of this whirlwind, Maya finds moments of quiet reflection. Late one evening, as she sits on her porch watching the sunset, she thinks about how much has changed since that fateful day in court. Back then, she'd simply wanted to clear her name and move on with her life. Now she realizes she's part of something bigger, a collective effort to dismantle barriers that have stood for generations. It's exhausting work, but it's also fulfilling in ways she never imagined. Still, not everyone supports her efforts. Critics accuse her of being too ambitious or naive, claiming that institutional racism is too deeply rooted to eradicate completely. Others dismiss her activism as performative, suggesting she's seeking fame rather than genuine change. But Maya brushes off the negativity, knowing that criticism often comes hand in hand with progress. Instead, she focuses on the countless messages of gratitude she receives daily, from parents thanking her for paving a better path for their children to former inmates sharing stories of unfair treatment and expressing hope for reform. One particularly touching moment occurs when a young boy approaches her after a community event, clutching a handmade poster that reads, "Thank you, Maya." His mother explains that he was inspired by her courage and wants to grow up to be like her someday. Tears well in Maya's eyes as she kneels to hug him, promising, "You can do anything you set your mind to, sweetheart. Just remember, always stand up for what's right." As weeks turn into months, the momentum behind a reform movement grows stronger. News outlets begin highlighting success stories, cases where new policies lead to fairer outcomes, or instances where whistleblowers come forward to expose wrongdoing. Slowly but surely, trust in the justice system begins to rebuild, brick by brick. And while Maya knows the fight is far from over, she allows herself to feel a flicker of optimism. The road ahead will undoubtedly be long and challenging, but for the first time in a long time, she sees glimmers of hope, a brighter future shaped by the resilience and determination of those unwilling to settle for anything less than true equality. Months later, Maya stands outside the same courthouse where her life changed forever. The building looks different now, not because of any physical changes, but because of what it represents. Gone are the days when this place felt like a fortress of bias and exclusion. Today, banners hang proudly from its columns, celebrating diversity, equality, and reform. Justice for all is emblazoned in bold letters across one of them, a phrase that once seemed like an empty promise, but now carries the weight of real progress. Maya takes a deep breath, savoring the cool morning air as she gazes up at the courthouse. It's hard to believe how far things have come since that chaotic day when Judge Holloway was led away in handcuffs. Back then, she'd been fighting just to prove her innocence. Now she's standing as a symbol of hope, a living testament to the power of resilience and collective action. Her journey has been anything but easy, but every challenge has brought her closer to the change she dreamed of. Inside the courthouse, sweeping reforms are underway. New policies mandate implicit bias training for all judges, attorneys, and law enforcement officers. Independent oversight committees have been established to review cases of alleged misconduct, ensuring accountability at every level. Courtrooms now display posters reminding everyone of their rights, written in multiple languages to reflect the community's diversity. Even the demeanor of court staff feels warmer, more welcoming, a subtle but meaningful shift that makes justice feel accessible rather than intimidating. For Maya, these changes aren't just abstract concepts, they're personal victories. She remembers sitting in the gallery during early town hall meetings, listening to citizens share stories of mistreatment and frustration. Many had given up on the system entirely, convinced that nothing would ever change. But Maya refused to let despair win. With each speech she gave, each policy proposal she supported, and each person she encouraged to speak out, she chipped away at the walls of injustice. And now, those walls are finally starting to crumble. As she walks through the courthouse doors, Maya notices something remarkable. The atmosphere inside feels lighter. Families sit together without fear, knowing their voices will be heard. Lawyers greet clients with genuine respect, freed from the condescension that once marred so many interactions. Judges preside over cases with fairness and empathy, guided by new ethical standards designed to protect everyone equally. This isn't perfection. It's still a work in progress, but it's a step in the right direction. Later that afternoon, Maya joins a group of activists gathered near the courthouse steps for a celebratory rally. Speakers take turns addressing the crowd, sharing updates on ongoing efforts to strengthen reforms and expand protections for marginalized communities. When it's Maya's turn to speak, she steps forward, greeted by thunderous applause. For a moment, she simply smiles, taking in the sea of faces before her, young and old, diverse yet united by a shared vision of justice. When I walked into this courthouse months ago, she begins, her voice steady and clear, I never imagined I'd leave as part of a movement. I thought I was fighting alone, just trying to clear my name. But look around you. None of us are alone anymore. She pauses, letting her words sink in. We've shown that ordinary people can create extraordinary change. We've demanded fairness, and we've started to see results. But our work isn't done, not yet. Her speech ends with a call to action, urging everyone to remain vigilant and continue pushing for reform. As the crowd cheers, Maya feels a sense of fulfillment wash over her. This isn't the end of her fight. It's the beginning of a new chapter. One where justice isn't just a lofty ideal, but a tangible reality within reach. That evening, as Maya tucks her children into bed, she reflects on how much has changed, not just in the world around her, but within herself. She's no longer just a mother or an advocate. She's a leader, a beacon of hope for countless others. Though scars remain from her encounter with Judge Holloway, she wears them as badges of honor, reminders of the battles fought and won. As she turns off the light and closes her bedroom door, Maya allows herself to dream of the future, a future shaped not by fear or prejudice, but by courage, compassion, and unwavering determination. Whatever challenges lie ahead, she knows she'll face them head-on, armed with the knowledge that no obstacle is insurmountable when people stand together. Justice may take time, but it always finds its way. And Maya Johnson has made sure of that.